Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Sto Tarasata Shishimat. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Nanjakoti Vaishnavinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki.
Jai.
Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. So welcome to Tuesday morning's class of the Srimad Bhagavatam, being broadcast on Dublin Krishna Temple Facebook and Dublin Krishna Temple YouTube, and hopefully soon to be on Zoom or WebEx or one of those, so we can have some interaction in the class as well. So we're continuing with the Canto 1, Chapter 9, the passing away of Bhishma Dev for the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're going to have quite a long purport, so you have to get your concentration together for this one. Actually, you don't really, because it's very, very interesting. So, but at the same time, it's worth to get ready that it is going to be quite a long one. And it's quite a famous one as well. Well, Prabhupada, this is in the first canto which Srila Prabhupada wrote in India in 59, 60, 61. And so in this he's talking about the four varnas and ashrams, and he talks about a few other very interesting things, which is written about 60 years ago. So it's worth noting. Okay, so I'll start with the Sanskrit. Purusha svabhava vihitan, Purusha svabhava vihitan, Yata varnam yatashramam, Vairagya rakupadibhyam, Amnata vayalakshanan, Purusha svabhava vihitan. Interesting. Purusha svabhava vihitan. Yeah. Purusha svabhava vihitan, Yata varnam yatashramam, Vairagya rakupadibhyam, Apnato Bhayalakshanam, Purusha svabhavat vihitan, Yata varnam yatashramam, Vairagya ragupadibhyam, Apnabhayo lakshanam. K. Purusha, the human being.
Purusha, the human being.
Svabhava, by his own acquired qualities.
By his own acquired qualities.
Vihitan,
Vihitan,
prescribed.
prescribed.
Yata, according to.
according to
Varnam,
Varnam,
classification of castes.
classification of castes.
Yata,
Yata,
according to.
according to
Ashramam,
Ashramam,
orders of life.
orders of life.
Vairagya,
Vairagya,
detachment.
detachment.
Raga,
Raga,
attachment.
attachment.
Upadibhyam,
Upadijam,
out of such designations.
out of such designation.
Anata,
Anata,
systematically.
systematically.
Abai,
Abai,
both.
both.
Sorry, that was ubai, yeah. Ubai,
Ubai,
both. Lakshanam,
Lakshanam,
it's lakshanan, sorry.
Lakshanam,
Symptoms.
symptoms.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. At Maharaj Yudhishthir's inquiry, Bhishmadev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So he described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. The conception of 4 castes and 4 orders of life, as planned by the Lord Himself, Bhagavad Gita 4.13, is to accelerate transcendental qualities of the individual person so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identity and thus act accordingly to get free from material bondage or conditional life. In almost all of the Puranas, the subject matter is described in the same spirit, and so also in the Mahabharata, it is more elaborately described by Bhishmadev in the Shanti Parva, beginning from the 60th chapter. The Varnashram Dharma is prescribed for civilized human beings just to train him to successfully terminate human life. The great terminator. To successfully terminate human life. That's what Varnashram is about. Self-realization is distinguished from the life of the lower animals engaged in
Eating, sleeping, mating, defending.
eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. Bhishmadev advised for all human beings 9 qualifications. So is everybody ready for the 9 qualifications? So here they are. Not to become angry. 2. Not to lie. 3. To equally distribute wealth. 4. To forgive. 5. To beget children only by one's legitimate wife. 6. To be pure in mind and hygienic in body. 7. Not to be inimical toward anyone. 8. To be simple. 9. To support servants or subordinates. This is what Bhishma advised. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above-mentioned preliminary qualities. Besides these, the brahmanas, the intelligent men, the administrative men, the mercantile community, and the labourer class must acquire special qualities in terms of occupational duties mentioned in all the Vedic scriptures. So here we go, first. For the intelligent men, controlling the senses is the most essential qualification. It is the basis of morality. Sex indulgence, even with a legitimate wife, must also be controlled, and thereby family control will automatically follow. An intelligent man abuses his great qualifications if he does not follow the Vedic way of life. It's interesting. So he says that an intelligent man abuses his great qualifications if he does not follow the Vedic way of life. This means he must seriously make a study of the Vedic literatures, especially of what? Of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. For learning Vedic knowledge, one must approach a person who is 100% engaged in devotional service. He must not do things which are forbidden in the Shastra. A person cannot be a teacher if he drinks or smokes. In the modern system of education, the teacher's academic qualification is taken into consideration without evaluation of his moral life. Therefore, the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. So, first, just even in modern education, if the moral behavior of the person is not taken into account, the teacher, the Brahman, the teacher, then Prabhupada says the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. And then, of course, the next is the Kshatriya, and that's almost not considered in this day and age, that they have to behave properly in order to rule properly. But anyway, the Kshatriya, the member of the administrative class, is especially advised to give charity and not to accept charity in any circumstances. Modern administrators raise subscriptions for some political functions, but never give charity to the citizens in any state function. It is just the reverse in the injunctions of the Shastra. The administrative class must be well versed in the Shastra, but must not take to the profession of teachers. The administrators should never pretend to become non-violent and thereby go to hell. When Arjuna wanted to become a non-violent coward on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was severely chastised by Lord Krishna. The Lord degraded Arjuna at that time to the status of an uncivilized man for his avowed acceptance of the cult of non-violence. And this is an important point here. The administrative class must be personally trained in military education. Cowards should not be elevated to the presidential throne by dint of numerical votes only. The monarchs were all chivalrous personalities, and therefore monarchy should be maintained provided the monarch is regularly trained in the occupational duties of a king. In fighting, the king or the president should never return home without being hurt by the enemy. The so-called king of today never visits the warfield. He is very much expert in artificially encouraging the fighting strength in the hope of false national prestige. As soon as the administrative class is turned, and listen to this, into a gang of mercantile and labourer men, the whole machinery of government becomes polluted. So it's the same. The Vaishyas are the members of the mercantile communities, are especially advised to protect the cows. Cow protection means increasing milk productions, namely curd and butter. Agriculture and distribution of foodstuff are the primary duties of the mercantile community, backed by education in Vedic knowledge and trained to give in charity. So again, they're Vedically trained. As the Kshatriyas were given charge of the protection of the citizens, Vaishyas were given charge of the protection of animals. Animals are never meant to be killed. Killing of animals is a symptom of barbarian society. For a human being, agricultural produce, fruits and milk are sufficient and complete foodstuffs. The human society should give more attention to animal protection. sorry, I want to get back on that one. For a human being, agriculture produce, fruits and milk are sufficient and compatible foodstuffs. Yeah, so it's agricultural produce, fruits and milk. The human society should give more attention to animal protection. The productive energy of the labourer, again here's another major point by Prabhupada. The productive energy of the labourer is misused when he is occupied by industrial enterprises. Industry of various types cannot produce the essential needs of man, namely rice, wheat, grains, milk, fruits and vegetables. The production of machines and machine tools increases the artificial living fashion of a class of vested interests and keeps thousands of men in starvation and unrest. This should not be the standard of civilization. Finally, the Shudra class is less intelligent and should have no independence. They are meant for rendering sincere service to the three higher sections of the society. The Shudra class can attain all comforts of life simply by rendering service to the higher classes. It is especially enjoined that a Shudra should never bank money. As soon as the Shudra accumulate wealth, it will be misused for sinful activities in wine, women and gambling. Wine, women and gambling indicate that the population is degraded to less than Shudra quality. That's in italics here. That's kind of some of these sentences that Prabhupada gives emphasis to, or in italics. I'm not sure who did that, but it's quite interesting. Wine, women and gambling indicate that the population is degraded to less than Shudra quality. The higher castes should always look after the maintenance of the Shudras, and they should provide them with old and used garments. A Shudra should not leave his master when the master is old and invalid and invalid. And the master should keep the servants satisfied in all respects. Shudras must first of all be satisfied by sumptuous food and clothing before any sacrifice is performed. In this age, so many functions are held by spending millions, but the poor labourer is not sumptuously fed or given charity, clothing, etc. The labourers are thus dissatisfied, and so they make agitation. The Varnas are, so to speak, classifications of different occupations, and ashram dharma is general progress on the path of self-realization. Both are interrelated, and one is dependent on the other. The main purpose of ashram dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. The brahmachari ashram is the training ground for the prospective candidate. In this ashram, it is instructed that this material world is not actually the home of the living being. The conditioned soul and the material bondage are prisoners of matter, and therefore self-realization is the ultimate aim of life. The whole system of ashram dharma is a means to detachment. One who fails to assimilate the spirit of detachment is allowed to enter into family life with the same spirit of detachment. Therefore, one who attains detachment may at once adopt the fourth order, namely renounced, and thus live on charity only, not to accumulate wealth, but just to keep body and soul together for ultimate realization. Household life is for one who is attached, and the vanaprastha and sannyas orders of life are for those who are detached from material life. The brahmachari ashram is especially meant for training both the attached and the detached. So,
Can you read the verse again?
could I read the purport again?
Text.
Text. Okay. At Maharaj Yudhishthir's inquiry, Bhishma Dev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. I was born in the darkness, and this is my spiritual master opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respect. Krishna Vidai, Krishna Vistayam Tadeshma, Satsri Pascal Swami, Krishna Vidai, Krishna Vistayam, Shmani Bhakti, Tiswani, Vitina, Namaste, Saraswati. Cool. Sorry, that was a phone call there.
Let's see if it happens.
So, is it on?
I don't know, I have to check.
Sometimes it gets good on. Is it on?
Yeah, it seems to be. There's a lag here.
Okay.
So.
Okay, it's on. I just wanted to take the first section of Bhishma's instructions, and it's called not to become angry. And I want to reference a class recently given by two devotees who've been to Ireland on a couple of occasions, Uttama and Partha, in which they talk about emotion during conflict. I think every one of us has experienced conflict, and so how to deal with conflict, especially in light of what Bhishma Dev is saying here, is not to become angry. So how do you do that? Is it possible not to become angry? It's often said, and it's been quoted quite a lot, that if you repress things, then you'll become angry. And people often say that the world wars were fought because there was so much repression going on. Of course, that's pretty nonsensical, because I think so many wars go on because of passion and the likes. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But emotion, it's a very important, emotion is such an important thing in spiritual life. You have spiritual emotions, the emotions and the love between Radha and Krishna. But there's also this emotion here of anger, which is pinpointed by Bhishma, and I refer to it because it's something which I've tried to study a lot and tried to deal with a lot. So in Kali Yuga, people are always disturbed, and there is conflict over the slightest thing. Isn't that right? That's the definition of Kali Yuga. Oh God, I can't remember the actual Sanskrit of that, but anyway, it's in 1110. You can check it out. And it's interesting that one of the things that's said about Kali Yuga is that the finer sentiments in life are reduced dramatically, and so even then in Kali Yuga we find that anger is very much prevalent. Okay, give you some examples. It's said that in any one evening on television there is literally hundreds of murders go on, isn't it? People tune in for horror, murder, war. So do they happen by chance? No, they happen because of anger. And so therefore the finer sentiments are reduced but it said one point that that Partha was making is that one should examine oneself as well. If one starts to get a little bit annoyed about something or frustrated about something, one should be careful not to just become angry then, you know. And because the finer sentiments are reduced, we do have many different types of emotions. So therefore we should be careful. Don't go straight to anger straight away. Because what does anger do? Anger produces more anger, you know. And even actually in the system, in the brain, how the brain works. This is quite an interesting science. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, but I'm told that there is a system whereby the cortex allows you to come into context with what you do, and there's a prefrontal cortex which tells you what to do when so many emotions are there. It gives you some perspective or context in things, you know. But when that's not there, it's just there's a little lid which completely blocks that out, and we often hear the phrase "flipping the lid." But that's I'm not sure if that comes from this, but when the emotions get very strong, then there is a whole amount of cortisol, it's called, goes into the system, and at that point that overtakes, and one starts to talk, and it blocks the cortex, which allows you to think about what's happening. So that's just a simple system in the human being, and it's called the fight or flight system as well. You know, you either, okay, I'm going to fight this, or you know, all types of perspective goes out of context, and you just start to you respond one way or the other, either run or you fight. So this is part of the controlling of the anger in the mode of goodness, because we know and we've been told that anger it can be used in Krishna service, and the example is given of Hanuman when he went to Lanka. He destroyed the whole of Lanka when his tail was burning. He went and he destroyed so many different things. So this Hanuman is very justified, and there's so many different sections in the Bhagavatam where it's justified anger. But when we get angry, you know, and does that happen often? I'd like to ask everyone in my audience, does anyone in the audience ever get angry? You know? Okay, I might ask another.
They all say no.
They all say no, Shani says. And another question is, how often do you get angry? Because I didn't accept your first answer. Mm-hmm. And okay, another question: how many times a day do you get angry? So there's all different levels of anger. So is that anger in the mode of goodness? And the answer to the question is, in general, maybe it's not in the mode of goodness. It could well be in the mode of ignorance and passion. And it's called the Rudra effect. And that's explained in the Bhagavatam as well. And it's sort of, you get angry, suddenly your voice starts to raise, your fists start to clench, you know, you start to go hell for leather in a discussion. And and so therefore it's often a case, even over something minor, even over something really, really minor, then two people can start going at each other. One person gets angry and another person starts to also get angry because that person's getting angry, and then this person sees this other person getting, what are you even getting angry for? You're not the one to get angry, I'm to get angry. And suddenly it escalates. The whole thing escalates. And suddenly, which might have been a discussion about somebody didn't put a top on the toothpaste, or somebody didn't dry the dishes properly, suddenly it gets to the stage that the lady's walking out of the house with the children, not coming back again, and the husband is saying, "Again, I don't want to see you back again." You know. So why did that happen? It was because there wasn't sufficient.
Because he didn't put the top in the toothpaste.
Shani said because he didn't put the top in the toothpaste. But No, it's because we didn't take time to evaluate. Didn't allow the what's called the frontal cortex to have access. The lid was flipped, and therefore the anger kind of came in, and I can say even from experience that it can be a very destructive. It's called cortisol. I'm just basing now on this class. It was a very wonderful class given by Uta and my partner. I might not absolutely quote them correctly, so forgive me if I make a mistake on it. But the anger can be very polluting to the body, and it can be very poisonous actually to the body as well, and it can be the result of, it can result in illness and so on, because the modes of passion and ignorance are giving way to a very toxic kind of situation. And so what is one meant to do in situations like that? And that this is, Bhishma says, not to become angry. This is brilliant. I heard Mahatma Prabhu give a very amazing answer to somebody the other day when they were saying, how can you control your anger? And Mahatma basically Prabhu said that, well, that's kind of secondary. You can control your anger. It means that you're still aware of your anger. Your anger is there, you know, but you're trying to control it. You're actually trying to control your anger. But he said in his inimitable way is that we shouldn't be angry, you know. We shouldn't be angry. So in other words, you should live your life in such a way that you don't allow these things to develop in you. So that's quite amazing, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Yes, and so I thought it was really good because sometimes I kind of, when I'm trying to deal with my anger, it's it can be you know, you take a while to try to deal with it. And actually that's another thing that Uttama was giving some she was giving some advice on, is that it's like when there's a fire on, when there's a fire going, right? That's not the time to start learning the fire drill, you know. In other words, you have a fire drill ready well in advance of the fire so that you know what to do when the fire is there. So even among couples, he was using it for couples actually, or also for parents and children, that you are both aware of these things which can happen, and even that you actually say, okay, let me take time to let's call a stop to this, call time on this, and we'll come back and address it again in a little while. So that's also kind of a good technique, and we do need these techniques in our communities, and in our marriages, in our families, in our communities, societies, so that we can access the mode of goodness rather than descend into the moments of passion and ignorance, and because Bharata made the point is that when we're angry, that's the time when we're most likely to commit offences, isn't it? So that's the time when we actually can slow down our whole spiritual progress. Why? Just because we didn't take the time to be able to deal with our anger, or just because we didn't learn how to deal with it. And this is what the purport is also Prabhupada is saying in the purport, is that we have to be trained in these things. This is why this training is very, very important. Sometimes, and I've seen this in devotional communities, that anger is taken as some sort of great qualification. Oh yes, he really told him off, he gave him the sauce, he got on his case, and in the meantime the person leaves the movement, you know, the other person who's got angry at, whereas the other person is a great kshatriya or something. Do you know? I've seen this, and it's highly destructive. I've seen it in certain leaders, and it's not an attractive quality. Yes, it's not imitable. You know, it's not something that you want to imitate, and it puts people off. and people are kind of there while it's going on. They're maybe nodding their head and they're saying, I don't want to be part of a community where this type of stuff is going on. Maybe nodding their head and saying, yes, that's very nice, very nice. But internally they're saying, even consciously or unconsciously, I don't want to be in a situation where this type of thing is going on. That's what they're saying. So don't think we can kind of get away from it. We're a great society, we're really great. That was a discussion I had recently. I always kind of get worried when devotees think this is the best situation ever. We're really in a good situation now. Than ever before. I always got to get wary about that because it's pride comes before a fall, or it's not the best situation. We're in the material world. It's a very difficult place, and we're just to keep our head above water. We're doing well, and just keep your head down and keep working and stop looking up and thinking that you're great. So just a few thoughts on that, but at the same time we do have to also smell the flowers and enjoy the situation while it's there. Enjoy the when devotees get together and they talk, or the devotees get together in the kirtan, then it's the spiritual world. We should relish it. That's what it's meant. It's shushakam kartamaviyam. It's joyfully performed, and it's
everlasting.
It's everlasting as well, and we do get a taste of the everlasting in those situations. I'll come back to something else Prabhupada said in the purport there, but there's another point which Partha made, was that a specific example of this in the Bhagavatam is when Dhruva's brother was killed, and Dhruva started to destroy the whole Yaksha race, and he got very, very angry because it was, in one sense, it was justified, but he started to kill everybody, and even innocent people he was killing. So it took Manu, Swayambhuva Manu, to come and to actually to be the person to try to bring the person back down out of this situation. Stop being angry. You're being over the top here. You have to stop this anger, because it's destroying innocent people. And at that time, Swayambhuva Manu made a statement. He said, anger is the foremost enemy of self-realization. So anger is the foremost enemy of self-realization. So it's another one of the Mahajans, Swayambhuva Manu, making this point to Dhruva Maharaj. And that's when he made this point also. That's when you can commit Vaishnava Aparad. So Uddhava then made a point about when we're dealing with children, that sometimes, because this cortex isn't actually fully developed in a child until they're 25 years of age, so the child sometimes can't access the reasons, and so they might get absolutely frustrated and angry because they spilled some water on the floor. Do you know what I mean? It can be something very simple as that, or he took my toy, and they're having a big anger tantrum about that. So, and also adults can be in that situation as well, we can say. And we should also, that's the time when the parent can actually come and help the child and become, give reason to the child, no, that's okay. Or and actually in this situation, the parent may actually comfort the child or hug the child or whatever, just to give that comforting there, that the child is away from the fight or flight situation, because it's to them they can't realize what it is, and they're just freaking out. And so, but when they get comfort, they get safe again, then they calm down, and they start to rationalize it a little bit too. So also, we should also do that in devotional life. Sometimes if people do, even in the devotional communities, start to go excessively in that direction, then we can also come in and try to also to deal with the situation. Obviously, you have to be very expert to do that, but sometimes it is required. So we should therefore stay in the mode of goodness, and that was the and one sentence which I thought was very good, was we should forge pathways to regulate emotions, you know, to forge pathways to regulate emotions. In other words, this is the practice of devotional service. Okay, so just to go back to the purport, so many wonderful sections there. One is to gradually realize our spiritual identity. That's the whole goal of the Varnashram system. And the second goal is to successfully terminate human life. I mean, it makes it an adventure every day, really. That we're in the business of successfully terminating human life, of birth and death and birth and death and birth and death. And we're constantly getting education in that by studying the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. That's how Prabhupada says it. And then there's these 9 qualifications. I mean, we will go through them. There's to not to become angry, not to lie, to equally distribute wealth. I love that. That's really nice. To equally distribute wealth. Then the big one, to forgive. That's the real wealth of the Brahmanas. To beget children only by one's own legitimate wife. Okay. To be pure in mind and hygienic in body. Not to be inimical toward anyone. That's a great quality to develop. But that's Suridam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna is the great friend of everyone. So that's one of the qualities in Bhagavad Gita that's stressed over and over and over and over again. To be a friend to everyone. You know, that's something which we want, to be equal to everyone and to be a friend to everyone. And yet, you know, here we have this hierarchy that's being presented. Very interesting how that works. There's a hierarchy there, but yet we're equal to everyone and we're friendly to everyone. And to support servants or subordinates. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above mentioned preliminary qualities. And so the intelligent class means controlling the senses. And it's interesting, Prabhupada immediately goes to sex life here. He talks about controlling the senses in that way. And then he says, sex indulgence, even with legitimate wife, also must be controlled. And then he says, and thereby family control will automatically follow. Yeah, this is quite incredible. This is an amazing science. Yeah, I just wanted to make the point. I thought there was a very nice point when Pavani was saying the other day when she was quoting Uttama that for children to learn should make it fun for them. You know, I thought that was very, very important. And then I thought about this one as well. But this is even a pre-family planning. You know, pre-family planning. If we are controlled in our senses, then automatically family control will automatically follow. And I took from that, rightly or wrongly from Prabhupada, that the children or your offspring will then also be controlled. And we also know that at the time of conception, the mentality of the man and the woman, that actually dictates the consciousness of the child as well subsequently. So these are very higher levels of understanding, and it is an incredible gift that we can give to society, which is absolutely, I mean, some of the stuff that goes on today, I won't even pollute your mind with it, but that's so-called healthy exchanges today, and especially in relation to sex life, it's completely out of hand, completely and totally out of hand. And then they wonder why society is out of hand and how the progeny or the prajas are uncontrollable and so on. But anyway, and then the Prabhupada in the point there makes that the modern system of education, only academic qualification is allowed in. So you can have a big lusty professor who's teaching people moral philosophy, which I encountered one time when I was in Trinity College giving a talk, and the professor of ethics was started to absolutely, literally lust after the actual the students that were in his class. I mean, it was gross. He thought it was funny, but anyway, enough said. That was Trinity, our foremost college, the professor of ethics. Aside, and you can go into the divinity as well, and you can the College of Divinity, which is a joke. Sorry, not all. Sorry, I just I have to take that back there. But I just when I used to do some book distribution, I used to sometimes come across divinity students who didn't believe in God, and who were just we're checking if there is a God. Yeah, this is the divinity. Anyway, enough said. So apologies if I made any untoward statements there. Now, the next thing is well versed in the Shastra, personally trained in military education. This is what's important for the Kshatriyas. So you were trained how to get angry, when to get angry, how to be, how to achieve your goal in battle, and so on. So you needed people who were pretty well trained to be able to do this, because they were protecting Dharma. Why? Because there are adharmic people, demons and devotees. So therefore, you have to be able to deal with demonic mentality in an effective way. So therefore, we need Kshatriyas who are able to do that. And then Prabhupada, in this section, he talks about presidents. So voting in a president he just thought that was that doesn't make sense, because in the president he was explaining how they cower in battle rather than perform in battle, and that's provided the monarch is trained. Monarchy is good if the monarch is trained. There's no point in having a monarch. Myself and Shani were talking the other day about Henry VIII and some of the absolutely abominable activities of the aforesaid mentioned monarch, and so therefore that the monarchy was not trained is worse than and then and also then Prabhupada talks about then again he wrote it 60 years ago, but then he talked about it's better to have a proper monarch than no he didn't say that. He said as soon as a gang of mercantile and labourer men take over, then the machinery of government is polluted. So now I think we have to be careful here. Actually, there's one thing I just because we know this, we as devotees may understand this, and then we say, the labourers and the mercantile men, they're taking over. So if there was a just monarch there, and then just say nothing, and then just think, okay, well, what are you doing about it? That's my question. What are you doing about it? It's all right to be, we have higher philosophy, but what about producing somebody of that ilk? What about becoming that sort of person, instead of maybe just start pointing the finger at some person? Because as soon as you start to get in discussion with people, they'll see that you're just a theorist. You have this imaginary society that you're talking about, and you're not having any effect in society. And Prabhupada didn't want that. He wanted us to actually have an effect in society. Now, as hard as that may seem, as difficult as it may seem, still, from my understanding of the books, that is what Prabhupada wanted. And whenever possible, we should try to reach that goal. We should always keep that in mind. Even if it is an impossible dream, we should do it. We should have the enthusiasm of the little bird who's trying to empty the ocean, and we should be trying to come to that kind of a level. And then from time to time, devotees do have some influence in society. A very wonderful devotee who left recently, Yasovati Prabhu, he actually had quite an effect in government, actually, just because of his mood and his character, and it affected. He made so many temples in Gujarat, and also he was admired even by the machinations of government as being a saintly person, and therefore he ISKCON in that particular part of the world is very highly respected. So it can be done. Like, and I was only ever at one class by that person. I went by actually not to people. It was in 2005 when there was I think it was Radhanath Maharaj and what's the Prabhu's name? Krishna, I can't remember. He wrote the Rhinos Shamasundar Prabhu. They did a rerun of the original Cross Madan festival in 1971 when Prabhupada came to Mumbai, and suddenly there were literally tens of thousands of people came, where before there was literally nobody came. So they did another run of that. But anyway, I just met Prabhu, and he gave a class, but he was such a humble person, and he was such an elevated devotee, and you wouldn't have, taken him apart from anyone else. He wasn't looking for any grandeur or anything. He just went and gave a class very humbly, very powerful, effective class, and then just sat down afterwards among the devotees. Such a nice mood. So therefore, devotees can have that effect in society. So Prabhupada talks about that a gang of mercantile and men and labourer men, and the machinery of government is polluted. I'm aware of the time here, so just finally, cow protection means to increase milk production, means curd and butter. So in other words, to make curd and butter and not just use milk, you need to produce a lot. So that is the agriculture and the distribution of foodstuff. So that they also needed to be educated in knowledge and trained in charity, in giving. This is such an important thing for devotees. Devotees should be always giving. We should be very conscious to be free of that. I want for myself. I want to be protected. I'm trying to protect yourself. I want to have a nice place. I want to, it's my family. Okay, it's important to look after your family. I'm not saying it's not. But please don't get into this whole trying to protect your future like a madman, You can't do it. Krishna's in control. And it's very, very important that we should not fall into that I, me, mine mentality and try to justify it somehow. It's not required. It's actually it's ugly, and it is distasteful, and we should not partake in it. We should be very liberal, and we should learn how to give in charity. We should be taking the examples of King Ranti Dev, and who was giving everything and would not take. And we should also be a householder. When somebody, Prabhupada says, what is a householder? You should, before you eat yourself, you should go out and ask, is anybody hungry? That is what we have to develop. This is important, very, very important. And this is what we should be giving. This is where the training is. This training has to be there. Otherwise, this I, me, mine, grab, mentality comes in. It's very ugly. This is. I also wanted them to talk about this point, and I thought it's very interesting. The production of machines and machine tools increases the artificial living fashion of a class of vested interests, and keeps thousands of men in starvation and unrest. This should not be the standard of civilization. So, if anyone wants a little sniff of conspiracy theory, that's the little sniff there the Prophet is giving you. You're legitimized. Not that you spend all your time getting into the whole conspiracy theories. I mean, you could make the argument that the whole material world is a conspiracy theory of Maya, to suck us into what's going on in the material world, and that's what it is. That's what it does. That's Maya's, to keep us constantly in that kind of mentality. Whereas the constantly hearing about Krishna and the spiritual world is where we want to be. Like we're part of the marginal energy. So we can get down into the material energy and get in about spirit conspiracy theories going on here, or we can hear about Krishna and go to the spiritual energy and spend the time there, so that at the point of death, so we should terminate this human life. We should stop being born and reborn and whatever, and that way we can become spiritually realized. So then the whole aspect of the Varnashram is taken up again. The main purpose is to awaken knowledge and detachment. Wine, women and gambling indicates a degraded society. So that's what Prabhupada says. So do we have a good degraded society? Yes, we do. And so this is what Prabhupada wants to introduce, to bring some happiness into the world. So we should try our best. And let Krishna do the rest. And try very, very strenuously try to control the mind and the senses, you would say. But this by attaching to Krishna, that automatically will become detached from matter in that way. Okay, so I've gone on a bit longer than I normally would, so I'd like to thank everybody for listening today, and hopefully that made some sense to you, and there was something you could take from it. And of course the purport was full of meaning and full of instruction. So Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna, Shani.